Okay, 2012 Prius. This is the one from last week that had the damaged condenser. Some road debris flew up through the grill and hit the condenser, and I showed you the video of this and the other where I actually put some refrigerant in it, and you could see the refrigerant and dye leaking out of the small hole that was inside here. And what you see here is this is all the road debris damage that you pick up from little stones and rocks off the road. So this is natural damage just by small debris that gets through the holes right here, the vents. And even my own condenser on my car is damaged like this. And actually I'm going to put a screen up behind here to protect it from the road damage. I was even thinking of getting a brand new one to change on mine, because this actually, when they're smashed this bad, they actually stop the airflow. When they're not straight like this and they're completely smashed over to the side, airflow doesn't go through that little fin, and you're talking 1/4, 1/3 of the whole entire condenser will eventually be all smashed over with no airflow going through those cooling passages. And this is on the subcooling side of the condenser. These last few rows right down here, these are real crucial to have air going through these bottom rows, because the bottom few tubes are the ones that actually allow your condenser to do subcooling. So one thing you do on all cars, not just Prius, all cars if you can, you even cut open a receiver dryer. Every time you get a receiver dryer, cut it open and look what the filter looks like going in and what the filter looks like going out on a regular one. On these you just have a soft. So here's the screen, the little tiny screen. Focus. Okay, so that's a wire mesh. The green, of course, is the dye that's inside the system. But that little screen is what's supposed to protect everything. And here's a close-up of the bent over fins. And this is what the soft is supposed to look like. If I can stop it washing out white. So this is supposed to be pure white, like the paint. And this is pure green and clear, except for this little end right here. That's just a little bit of aluminum debris. And very, very small specks of metal. That is normal. You will get some. You can't have a perfectly clean system. Pull that out. See how it gets whiter as it went to the top. So this is where the majority of your liquid is, at the bottom. So you'll have the highest concentration of liquid and oil at the bottom. This is the downside, this is the high side. This is what comes out. And you see that port in there? You see that hole? That is where it comes through right here. And somewhere internally right here, it's blocked off inside this. So this is where your liquid comes down to the bottom. It still has some gas in it, fills up, and its port is blocked off on here because this came this way, went up, came down, and it goes through these last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These last 5 tubes right here are the ones that get subcooled and are supposed to be a solid column of liquid. In theory, it doesn't always work like that. But what you're taught in school and what you're taught in books is that this is a liquid down here getting subcooled. That is not always the case. That's only what you're taught in schools and guys read in books. And then it comes out here on the lowest discharge liquid line, and it's supposed to be a solid form of liquid. In theory, I'm going to say again, what you're taught in classes. There's a difference between real world and what you get taught in books. And unusually, controvirus. Unusually, we got really lucky here. I don't know where they got this one, but this condenser was made in Japan. Now, we've been having a problem. We don't know why we couldn't get them made in Japan, but they all started, you see it says Denso, the part number, and then made in Japan. This is the condenser. If you could get, this is what you want. If you could get the Japanese made condenser over the Honda of America one that gets shipped to us, that's made in China, because I could notice to my eyes right off the bat, I noticed that the fin spacing is tighter and there is more tubes than the one that's made in China through Honda America you get as a replacement. So I was very pleased to find out that somehow they got a Japanese manufactured Denso condenser instead of the Chinese made one. So I'm going to charge this up soon. I'm going to give you guys, because especially on Prius chat, they really need some info over there to show people what is normal and what is not normal, because what's being talked about, what is normal, from people who couch potato engineers and you know, YouTube professors are giving information that is totally wrong. Here's another thing. This is a manufacturer that makes an aftermarket condenser, and if you can see those holes there, those are the refrigerant passages. And if you can see the little fins inside there and compare it to my finger, those fins, those tubes inside there are huge. Those are considered large compared to the original equipment. The original equipment, the smaller the holes and fins are, the more surface area are, the more effective they are at dispersing heat, at conducting heat away from the refrigerant to the fins. They're more efficient. This is less efficient. This was a cheaper aftermarket brand, and if you can tell on here, if you look at the fin spacing, the fins are wider. So if you counted in 1 inch, and if I measured 1 inch from one fin to there, say on here you had 14 fins in 1 inch, and here you have 18 fins in 1 inch. So this is one way they cheat you when you buy a cheap aftermarket condenser. You'll also notice that the spacing of the tubes, so say you have 52 little coolant passage tubes, on maybe the aftermarket one you might get 48 cooling passage tubes. I'm just giving you an example, not exact numbers like on here like this. But you'll notice they'll cheat you out of tubes and they'll cheat you out of fins to give you a lower price. That's cheating you out of heat rejection, the efficiency of the actual condenser itself. What else can we go over here? So another thing, if you could run your vehicle and put it in heating mode, let's see, we're down to 278 microns and falling. So several minutes ago, I was pulling this down and I started up the heater. The car was cold. This car has been sitting here all night. And before the car heated up, I actually pulled the vacuum down and it was at 329 microns. And then finally the heater kicked in, the engine kicked in, the warm coolant started flowing. It's empty, going under a vacuum, and I turned the air for defrost over to cooling. Now I already had the interior to cool warm to about 90 degrees. So the hot coolant was flowing, it was blowing up on the defrost vent, and I had 329 microns of vacuum. I switched it over to cooling in mode to the face. So that switches the HVAC doors more open towards pure air, and it's in recycle. So it's taking the indoor out here, it's only 58, 60 degrees. I don't even think it's 60 degrees right now. Out here, it's not even 60 degrees. And indoor, it's 90 degrees inside the car. So the recycle vent is open to the air inside the car. I push the button for air conditioning to the mode to the face on recycle. So now I'm taking 90-degree air, fully putting it through the HVAC box and flowing that 90-degree air over the evaporator. As soon as I hit that button, I came back out here. You started shooting, seeing the number shoot back up, and I went all the way up to 497 microns from 329 microns. What was going on? I was superheating the refrigerant oil inside the evaporator, and there's moisture trapped in that oil and a tiny amount of refrigerant. But under that low vacuum with that added heat, it just flashed off the moisture came. Now if you could see this and imagine this in your mind, you know when you put water, a bead of water on a real hot frying pan and it sizzles, or you throw a drop of water in oil and it pops and it blows when you put oil, water in oil, or if you have wet vegetables, you just rinse them and you're gonna fry them and throw it in and the oil starts popping. Well, in a microscopic level, the moisture just starts exploding out of all the oil sitting in the evaporator, raising the pressure inside the system. And we're talking micro amounts of moisture. And you can read that on a micron meter. You cannot read that on a set of analog gauges. It's not possible. It's so small you can't read it. You can literally read the moisture being sucked out of the oil. This is something you can't do with normal gauges. Okay, so now that was like 15 minutes ago. The engine's still running. I still have it on heating in the air conditioning mode, and we dropped back down. Now we're below that 329. We actually went lower because I removed more moisture out over this duration of time under a higher heat load to the evaporator. The engine compartment has warmed up a little bit, so that warmed up my lines. So any of the lines exposed to the warm air that blows past the radiator, it's helped boiling off the water moisture trapped in the thin layer of ester oil in the tubes of the metal. The compressor is getting shaken and vibrated a little bit, so it vibrates the oil. So it's like if you put on a micron meter and you draw a vacuum and you have a compressor that has a couple ounces of oil, and you get a hammer and you tap on the compressor while you're going under a deep vacuum, you'll see your microns explode upwards, because you disturb the vapor pressure, the skin tension of the surface of the oil. And just like when you're making crystals in certain solutions and you have to add one little seed crystal inside of it to form, if you know chemistry, or there's certain chemicals that when you're making crystals and you're just at the point where it should have made a crystal, or water. Oh, there's a good one. Have you ever seen when somebody freezes water inside a water bottle, and you know you had it in there a long time but it didn't make water, but you bring it out and you put it on the table and you just flick the side of the water bottle, and all of a sudden you see a crystal form where you flicked it, and you see ice crystals form and completely turn the whole bottle of water into a slushy ice mess? This is the phenomenon that goes on when you're under a vacuum and you have steady still oil with moisture trapped in it. It's ready to explode out, but it needs something to break that surface tension of the oil and vibrate the molecules, and they'll burst out. This is what you have to understand what's going on, and the reason for reading down into microns and actually seeing a number. If you can never get to that number, there's a problem. If you can't hold that number, there's a problem. You got to know what the problem is, but you have to also understand and know the limitations of your tools. Using rubber hoses is a bad thing. You need to know the limit, and having the micron meter located inside your manifold thing is a bad thing. The best place on this system would be like at a sensor. If they had a third port located far away from where you're performing the vacuum, say another line way down here, and if you could hook up your micron meter down there, you'd be getting the true vacuum. So that's it for now. I'll come back in a few minutes, reshoot. We'll have a video number 2, and we'll take our temperature difference between the inlet and the outlet of the condenser on a brand new condenser, and you'll see what's normal and not normal under these conditions. All right, see you guys on the next video.